All right, my friends, welcome to another episode of the RPG Backlog. This is our Final Fantasy I arc, and this is it. This is the finale. This is episode 4. We have completed the game. We are already off the rails before we even turn the mics on, so this is going to be fun. This week, I'm here with Travis and Tom. How is everyone doing?
I'm doing good. I was doing horrible last week when we had planned to record, and just kind of trying to survive, and everyone in my family having plague-like symptoms. But I'm back. I'm reborn and only slightly congested and ready to talk about this game.
You are remastered in a pixel way. That's
exactly.
Then that's why I let you go first, because you've got a little more of a story here to tell than I do.
Well, you've had an exciting week, Travis.
Yes, but we won't dive into that here and there. But yeah, I'm doing good. A little rough beginning of the week, but doing a lot better now. So yeah.
Oh yeah, there's certainly a lot of stuff not to dive in. I was going to mention how you set your clocks back half an hour, or set your clocks.
Well, no, I thought we were starting at 30 minutes earlier. I knew what time it was. I just thought we started 30 minutes earlier than what we were supposed to. And they were like, no, dude, we're doing it at 9. I was like, oh shit, I thought we did it at 8:30.
Got it.
Yeah, but I will admit that all week I've been thinking Tuesday. I was like, oh, it's Thursday. It's like, no, it's Tuesday. Holy crap.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah. So my internal clock's been jank all week anyways. So
it's the onset of the holidays. It's already starting.
Yeah, we're not going to, I don't want it over with.
Well, at least you are only half an hour off and not 2,000 years in the past. Look at that segue.
Were you trying hard on that one? Because it felt like you were.
I was trying very hard. You could say that time is a mirage.
Oh God, can we just stop now, please? Let's just get into the game.
I'm sorry. This is just way too much chaos for us. Yes. Okay.
I'm about ready. Dude, if this was my Discord server, you'd be muted right now. I'm just telling you.
All right. So this week we are finishing Final Fantasy I. We're talking about the Tower of Mirage. We're talking about the Flying Fortress and the Temple of Chaos. Why don't we start with just general impressions? How'd this end up for you guys before we dive in?
I can jump in and I will say it's pretty typical experience for me overall. Way too easy, but then I think I was way over leveled. Well, no, I don't think. We know I was way over leveled.
Yeah, you were, my friend.
I hit level 99 with all 4 of my characters. And wow. Yeah, the sad thing is only 3 of them maxed out on the hit points.
Oh, wow.
My Black Mage never made it to max hit points.
That makes sense.
That little butthole made it to 994, I think it was. I was like, come on, man. 5 more hit points. You couldn't give me 5 more. But I still enjoyed the game quite a bit. I can see where we'll get into this probably a bit more, where some of the things that they've done for quality of life was very much needed. Because I can sit here and see where some of the things, if they hadn't existed, this would have made the game much longer, just like the walking speed, and way more tedious. But I still have some bones to pick with it. But overall, I'm happy with this game.
Awesome. What about you, Tom?
I'm not unhappy with this game, and maybe it was just because I was sort of, I don't know. This was not my favorite section of it. I will say that. But while we're talking about levels, Larry, where did you end up?
I think I ended up around 67 or so for all my characters.
So I was the most appropriately under-leveled of all of us. I think I capped at 58.
Oh, okay. That's pretty close to where I was.
Yeah, so there was a certain point there where I was doing good, as I started feeling better on the weekend, so I picked this thing back up. And what did we started with? It was the waterfall cavern, and there wasn't a whole lot to that, right? It was just one big map, and you kind of wander around. And
you and I started with the waterfall. Someone else had business.
Oh, that's conveniently why I left it off of what we were talking about this week. Yep. Go to the waterfall, get the warp cube, and then you go to Lefenia, where you have translated some language,
warp
right?
Cube. It was the Rosetta Stone, wasn't it?
No, from the robot in the waterfall cavern.
Was it the warp cube?
Warp cube, yeah.
The Rosetta Stone was somewhere else. Then
Rosetta Stone was earlier, yeah, in the last
right.
section.
The warp cube you get from the robot, and which, by the way, not to keep beating this drum, but do y'all remember in the sort of end game of Final Fantasy Adventure, there's a frickin' robot that shows up and helps you with a bunch of stuff and then dies?
Oh God, that's right. Where it falls off the tower or whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's. I don't think I fully appreciated when we played that game. It's like, oh, they just called it Final Fantasy to sell it or whatever. It's like, no, it was towing the line pretty closely to, at least as far as Final Fantasy 1 is concerned.
Right.
They had, like, if not all, 80% of the tropes and stuff sort of made their way over there, which it was interesting to continue to find, even this late in the game, stuff like that.
It's like, look, we've done a lot of work on Final Fantasy 1. Why don't we just remix it and make Final Fantasy Adventure and make another game? But yeah, Lufenia, before we get to Tower of Mirage, you're talking to a bunch of NPCs to get a bell, which you use.
Do any of them say anything? I kind of remember there's a lot of them to talk to, and it just worked out for me that the freaking last one that I spoke to gave me the bell. And I was like, well, geez, I'm glad I'm kind of militant about that. Otherwise, I would have missed it. I'd try and talk to all the people, and most of them they give you, is it little like tidbits about world building kind of stuff?
Yeah, like world building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But did you go to the left first or to the right?
I think I went to the left first.
I did left and right, but the person I think is in the middle.
So
no,
for me, the bell was on the far right hand side and not the last person I talked to. But I'm looking at the map. And I'm counting. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10th person I talked to would have been the one that coughed it up.
Yeah,
that's about same for me. Yeah. And that
so I wonder
in the middle for me. Must be a number.
You think that's how it's done? That they're just you have to talk to all of them and the last one gives it to you or something like that?
Well, there's actually 13 total NPCs in the map. So I wonder if it's set up to where once you hit the 10th person you talk to, they finally cough up the bell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The text here says chat up every NPC you find and one will eventually hand over the bell. So there is some mechanism there, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that too, and that's why I think it was on a account saying you have to talk to a certain number of them before it would trigger it. That's why I was curious if you went to left or right first, because I was trying to figure out if we ended up talking to the same person last or if we did it differently.
Yes, especially if all of us. I think if we were to estimate, we're probably around that same number when we finally got the bell. So that number thing makes sense.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, thanks for reminding me that we did that part as part of this. For me, I thought the ending went pretty swiftly. It continued the D&D vibe for me, where there was this, I was thinking of them as like the maps that a dungeon master has created, the tower and the flying fortress, and just the different mechanisms to get through each one. There's some sort of, I don't know what the right word is, some sort of theme, basically. And then the boss rush. There's boss rush at the end. The bosses come back, which we've seen in lots of other games, which is pretty cool. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with it. It was a pretty breezy 10 hours overall, and I was over leveled enough that the Battle with Chaos was like, I don't know, 5 rounds maybe, and then Warmech as well. I pulled up Warmech on that bridge. There's
how long did you spend looking for him?
Probably 5 minutes or less. It didn't take very long.
Because I spent probably 10, and then I looked it up, and it was like a 1 in 100 chance, and I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to watch a video of this, because I didn't have the patience for it.
Yeah, it came up pretty quickly, but I didn't find it that, I don't know, interesting. It didn't seem that tough, to be honest.
I find it funny that the guide was like, "Oh, the Warmech is the toughest fight in the game." I was sitting going, "The last boss took longer for me to kill than the Warmech."
Yeah, me too. I agree.
So, and I was saying with you, is it took me like 5-10 minutes roughly, and then he popped The other thing is I did it for like 5 minutes before I did the boss on that map. And then I killed the boss. I was like, I'm going to go back and just try it one more time. And this very next battle after the boss was like instantaneous. Bam, there's the war mech. I was like, oh, okay, sweet.
Oh,
Kill
nice.
him
Cool.
and then leave.
Yeah.
It's funny. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, I just like the idea that there's a hidden kind of boss in there. That's kind of a neat idea.
I think the guide we were using even referenced that it's like you can sort of trace back, like, you know, Ultima Weapon and all those other guys. Like, this is the beginning of all of that. So that was pretty neat that
That's a good point. Yeah.
tuck this thing in here, that it's really hard but totally optional and you don't really get anything for it. But if you want to, you know, prove your mettle, it's there. I wanted to talk about for a minute, we keep mentioning the flying fortress. And you guys keep saying that, and I'm like, shit, I don't remember a flying fortress. And it's because you never see the exterior of this thing.
Yeah, you're just in a fortress.
You're in a map that you're told is in the sky somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
The only indication is that bridge that the war mech is on.
Oh, it's like over the...
Yeah, that because that's when you get to the top of the tower and you're outside, and if you look at it,
right,
you don't. Everything's like this weird bluish haze that's not really the ocean, but it kind of feels like a little bit because it's up
like
in the sky.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Got it. That's right. But so, you know, so much you're wandering around this flying fortress and hitting these teleporters that bring you to another location, and you're getting up. Was it 5 levels or so?
Yeah.
So just hoping you hit the right teleporters and get up to the top. The guide here said that there's a piece of loot, the adamantite, which you can turn into Excalibur by going back to Mount Durgar. Did anyone do that?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't find that.
I found the adamantite, but then I was in too much of a hurry for smithing. So is it cool? Did you use it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it jumped the power of the fighter or whatever, or knight, I guess he is at this point in time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exponentially. Like before that, I think my knight was hitting around 1K, but like my monk was hitting for 1800 to 2K.
Yeah.
And then once I got Excalibur, he jumped from hitting like between 8 and 1K to like 1500 to 1800.
Holy shit. Okay.
So it was a substantial jump in damage output on his part.
But your levels are in like the 70s and the 80s, right?
At that point, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Because like you guys mentioned this maybe, you know, at the end of last week. It's like, oh, he's hitting for that. Like my guys, and we can talk about this more when we get to chaos, but like my guys suck, man. Like I was consistently struggling to put up. I don't know. I actually want to save that discussion for chaos. I never saw anybody hitting for 1,000, much less 1,800.
Yeah, I capped at 1,000, so I never got to 1,800. But my monk was getting that consistently.
Okay.
My fighter was like 6 or 7.
With haste, my monk was hitting for 25 to 3.
Dude, putting haste on your monk is like the fucking hack for this game.
Yes, dude. Holy crap!
Every single fight, I put haste on the fucking monk. If there were still people alive by the time I got to that, you know.
Well, usually the bosses, and this is what happened with the war mech. Luckily, basically what happened is the first round, my knight hits for about 1K, my monk hits for about 1,500, haste pops off on the monk. Next round, monk goes first, does 2,500, fight over.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, okay, sweet. Chaos was the only, or not Chaos. What is his name? No, it was Chaos. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Was the only one that survived a few rounds of my monk doing 2,500.
Yeah. It should. It's the final boss. I'm glad it did. I can't imagine being, half your level, which is where Tom probably was. Like, how long did that fight against Chaos take you?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're dispensing with the rest of the game. We're just sort of talking about the end here.
We're talking around wherever we land. So,
so that was horrible. My battle with Chaos was terrible.
Oh man.
And I kind of knew that I was in for it because, and this is again just I had gotten to Temple of Chaos last night, and so I basically had I take my daughter to gymnastics class that lasts an hour, and I can sort of keep an eye on her. But basically, I have an hour to play there, and I have about an hour before we meet here. The way the might anyway, so I had about 2 hours to get through this. And I was plunking along, and so you've got Temple of Chaos has a couple of levels, and then you have the themed levels, right?
Yeah.
The first three, I think, maybe through the Earth level, I was just cruising along, and I had the boost on, but I was doing all the random encounters and stuff like that. And I kind of glanced at the clock, and it was like, oh, shit, I really got to get moving. So I turned the encounters off, and I'm just like sprinting through the levels, picking up junk in the treasure chests, and then fighting the fiends, right? Mm-hmm. I don't remember in the are the fiends buffed in this Temple of Chaos? I think they are.
I didn't see anything that says they were, but they felt like they had to have been. Otherwise, I would have one-shotted all of them.
They should be. They should be.
That's what I mean. They didn't feel when we encountered them playing normally. They were not. I never had any trouble with them, right? And then these guys, all of a sudden, they weren't killing me, but it was like, oh, I have to use heal one time, and this takes 3 rounds instead of the normal, 2 dudes go and then all the other, you know what I mean? Yeah. It was going slower. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But I wasn't having to use anything special, just kind of curing. Another thing I think I noticed is that, do you get another spell? I don't know what we call this, but like the number of times you can cast a spell in a given level. Do you get another one of those every time you level up?
Not every time, but you do get more of them up to a cap of 9 per 9 casts. What
I think is that 9 is the total number you can have. But let's say that I had 9 and I used all 9 and I had 0 and then I leveled up. I think it puts 1 back in there.
Oh, okay.
It might.
What I was finding was that as I was moving along, it's like I was using my spells, but I kept checking, and it's like, there were always points there when I needed them, which I thought was kind of weird. It seemed like I should have been running out faster. So I think that maybe is a thing as a guess. But anyways, because of the leveling and using the spell, it wasn't a big deal, but they were taking longer and longer and longer and longer as I got deeper down. And sure enough, man, I rolled up to chaos, and I'm starting to hit, and that took probably 25 minutes, maybe.
For one, without dying, the whole battle?
The whole battle.
Wow.
And I don't know. It's hilarious to me because I was definitely cheesing this game by the end because I just wanted to finish it. I'll cult to that. But I must have been doing something horribly wrong. Because normally my guys, when you're fighting trash mobs and stuff, you hit 12 times for 700 points or something. That's all right, great. You just mow through people.
Yeah.
I literally had my thief guy was hitting for single-digit damage points.
What the hell?
Wow.
I don't know what's going on.
Well, what weapon did you have? Because if it had an elemental attachment to it, it might be that Chaos was resistant to that.
Yeah.
Pull it up and see. I could pull it up and see. That very well may be. Right
now I'm looking at the stats, and I don't know why they didn't call this out in the guide, but if you look at the stats for the Lich, Merilith, Kraken, and Tiamat, those 4 bosses over again, all of them have more hit points, a higher attack rating, a higher defense rating. All of them are buffed compared to their original version.
Yeah, well, this says too, the good news is while they've been slightly upgraded this time out, so they definitely, good call.
Yeah, because Tiamat's original attack was 49, and then the second version is 75. So he's hitting significantly harder.
There's no way. I'm looking at the stats for Chaos, and they said he has 2,000 hit points.
That's impossible. He has to have way more than that, I can tell you.
Well, but he keeps healing himself. He heals himself.
Dude, I was doing 3,000 plus a round.
Oh, that's true. So he'd be dead after one move. Yeah.
Well, and when you say he heals himself, does it show up as a green thing?
It should.
It's good. Yeah.
I didn't see that once.
He's casting Cure, so.
No, maybe once I maybe saw that, but it was all haste and physical attacks and the thunder thing and the ice thing, and there's no way this guy had 2,000 hit points.
Well, it's weird because I'm watching a replay of the video right now, and they're hitting in this video at least for 500 a pop or whatever. So I'm trying to figure out how you could only hit for 1 or 9. That's crazy.
And I it might be that maybe because it says here that he resists DIA.
Two things.
Is that like the holy thing?
The holy and harm.
What's harm?
It's the negative energy flip of holy.
Oh, do we have spells for that?
It's like the black mage has a couple of them, like death.
That stuff.
And harm. He actually has a spell called harm, as I recall.
Okay. Yeah, so this is also incumbent on me. So I never even taught my guys haste. So I didn't have that. So,
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Well, you're on hard mode on this, man.
I'm just raw dogging it. So the end to this story is this is and it's fine until he started doing physical attacks, and then he was close to one-shotting my guys.
No shit.
And it was getting bad because you can heal him, you can resurrect him or whatever. It wasn't a thing. But all of a sudden it's like I'm starting to run. I'm out of my level 9, my level 8 magic points for both mages. That stuff is gone. I've used all the dry ethers or whatever that restore all of the spell points. I'm out of Phoenix Downs. It's really looking grim. And I'm frustrated with this. It's all right, clearly I've missed a bunch of stuff about this. I need to turn it off and go. Maybe I'll get Excalibur and come back or something like that. So I'm ready to do this. I hit the button to put it in auto mode because I'm let's just run out the clock here and he'll kill my dudes and it'll be over and it's fine. Mm-hmm. The second I hit that button, he kills my fighter. My black mage is long since dead. So I've got the knight, but then not the knight, the ninja who sometimes hits for 400 and sometimes hits for 8, and the white mage. That's all I've got left.
Oh my God.
The next attack from the ninja, hits for 150 or whatever, kills him.
Nice.
I was thrilled that happened. Yeah. Because I did not want to do that again. Anyways, so that was my chaos experience.
You almost had a more true experience than we did in terms of what people would experience playing the original NES cart version, where you were, I think leveling up as
super
much
hard.
As much as we did would have been nigh impossible unless you're spending multiple hours, way more than we did. So,
okay. And that's all fine and good. Did you guys have other experiences with the battle itself? Because I want to talk about the story next.
I mean, my experience is pretty. Looking through this, right? There's something in the tower before you get the flying tower. There's there's a blue dragon boss. I was I have my note in here that dragon was a boss.
Yeah.
The guy calls it not really a boss, It's
right. Yeah. But I didn't even realize that was supposed to be a challenge.
You have to talk to. Because sometimes they have a little sprite on the screen, and it's a guy you talk to, and then it starts a battle. I think those are maybe these little sub bosses or something.
Maybe, I don't know. I didn't even realize that was a boss. And as we were discussing earlier, the war mech, I was that's supposed to be the hardest fight in the game. Yeah. Not that big of a deal. With me, I was actually kind of surprised with Chaos because I expected kind of what I had come to see, which is one round of my knight, my monk, or black belt attacking, haste on the black belt, fight over.
Yep.
But when he attacked the next round and did 2.5K, and he's still standing there looking at me, I was oh shit.
That's how it is.
Oh, this is how it's going to be. I was all right, so the fighter will take him out. There goes another 1,500. Still standing there looking at me. I'm oh shit. We're actually going to have a fight. And then he physically attacks my monk and takes him from 999 hit points to 110. I'm oh shit. I might die here.
That's cool, because then it must mean it scales, because he was doing, what did that, 700 or 800 points. And that happened to me a couple of times, but kind of a similar thing where it's like, oh, it would take your guy like from full down to the red or something like that.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is actually going to be because I had been on complete autopilot. Like literally I had been hitting X just to have my guys just attack. Mm-hmm. That's how I got through the tower. That's how I got through the flying fortress. That's literally how I did the whole freaking second half of the game. And so now I'm like, oh shit, I can't hit auto attack because he might legitimately kill my ass.
I found it. He does have 20,000 hit points.
Oh, so not 2,000. Okay, that's a fucking typo. Got it.
So yeah, it took me 5 or 6 rounds to kill his ass off, which was surprising as shit for me because I was used to doing it in 2 rounds. And once around, he would pick someone, like he did the chain lightning thing, and I was like, I don't really care because like most of all my characters had like ribbons or something on them that basically nullified most of that damage. But it was funny, he did that once, and then I think it was almost like the AI realized, oh, this isn't going to work. And then he went exclusively physical attacks. And every round he would damn near kill someone so that my white mage had to do the full heals to get everyone back up. Otherwise, he would have killed somebody in 2 shots. But I was just kind of happy that I was like, oh, the final boss was actually not a challenge, but I actually had to pay attention for the first time in quite a while.
So I'm doing the math here. At 20,000 hit points, what I would say that on average, like at my high, if everybody was hitting well, it was maybe like 800, but that definitely wasn't happening every time. And I was like resurrecting people constantly, or they're dead, or using items or something like that. So let's say that maybe it was only doing like 600. So that's like 33 rounds, which tracks with roughly how long it took.
Did you use your white mage to cast any protective spells on the party?
After a while, yeah. When I realized how long it was going to take, there's one that does like the little hexagon shield, and there's one that makes them invisible.
Yeah, that one's good. The evasion one. Yeah.
I felt stupid as I was struggling and looking for, just like doodling on my phone, trying to see. It's like, oh, am I missing something here? Apparently, you can do those multiple times and they stack.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. That's really cool.
I did not realize it.
Which is, I don't know if this is going to happen in the later ones. I know by the time I started playing in Final Fantasy VII, that was not the case. It was.
Yeah, I don't.
Which is why I think everyone's sort of surprised by that. Speaking of surprising things, did you guys know that you can change your equipment during the battle?
Yes.
I had no idea. I found that out today.
I didn't know that, but I also never tried it. Yeah.
The reason why I did that is because at one point you had the fire sword, the ice sword, and something else. Same thing with the armor. You had the fire armor, the diamond armor, and the ice armor, and each one nullified a certain one. So I swapped them out depending on what I was fighting to limit the amount of damage they could do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's another thing, though, that like you definitely cannot do in later games in the series.
Well, it's something that certainly, like, at a lower level, you really would need to do in this game. I never needed to do it. I just was never in danger of dying. Yeah. But I can see if you were, like, that's a really cool way to mitigate some of that damage. Like, there's so much shit in this game that obviously we've seen in other games and is remixed in different Final Fantasy games, and obviously some of those things have not carried forward, like we were just talking about. But overall, like, the richness of Final Fantasy 1, I recognize in many of these other Final Fantasy games, to the point where, like, I was thinking about it today when I was at work. I was like, God damn, I really like Final Fantasy. And this year is the first year that I've dug into more than just one. I played 15 like 6, 7, 8 years ago, and that was it until this year. And now I'm like, oh, this might be one of my favorite series ever. Like, coming to it so late and still thinking that is really crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been that, and I think that's part of frustration isn't quite the right word, because it turned out okay in the end. But like, I wish that I had more time to put into this than I did on this time, because the mechanics are so rich. I mean, there's a lot of different things going on here, and it's much. My approach to this was attack magic and physical attacks, and then you cure when your hit points are low. That was like, super, super basic. And I think that there's a lot more to be done here if you want to think about it more deeply, which is very cool.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the piece that I missed out on because I was so overleveled. But it would have been cool to interact with that being lower leveled. Although I think, if I were having that experience with the NES cart, for example, I would just have been so fucking frustrated. But on this with the QOL, and it would have been fine.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. That if we hadn't have over leveled so hard earlier, you would need to engage with these other mechanics in order to just survive.
Yeah, and it's cool that it's there. Even late game where you can build Excalibur, like you really can only get that right before the final boss, but it could really probably make the difference for some people.
Yeah.
I mean, that is going to be a staple in Final Fantasy games, being like the most powerful weapon. It's interesting that there's only really one for the knight. In later games, and I don't know when this will start happening, there's like one per class.
Right.
Which is a cool concept because it's cool, but it's also kind of frustrating, I guess is the best way to put it. Because even in this game, you can see it. You could have a party full of knights or warriors, but you can only get one Excalibur.
Oh, interesting.
So good point, one of them's going to... This is where the random stats that we discovered is going to come into play, where you're going to sit there and be like, okay, which one is the one that's hitting the hardest? This is the one that I need to give Excalibur to where that one hits even harder.
Right.
And then everyone else just gets the best weapon you could buy at a store, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, my only qualm with the classes is like there really wasn't anything for the monk at any point.
Well, he was not supposed to have anything, right?
Exactly.
Right.
That's like kind of, and then we talked about this earlier, right? Where it's like there's so much gear for the warrior, and everybody else gets like the mages. There's like half as much stuff for them easily.
Right.
The ninja / thief, I guess, is what he started as. Was kind of in that he was somewhere in between. There still was not nearly enough warrior stuff. There was a little bit more stuff for him than the mages. Then when they graduate their class, they can mix and mingle a little bit more. I think that like opens up what's available to them. But yeah, I would have preferred to see more like parity in that regard in terms of like being able to kit them out.
Yeah, the gear for the mages was more of what just nullifies the most stuff.
Yeah.
Not so much there was nothing that, and that's something I think that they do a better job later on where you actually have gear that's like, oh, this is going to increase this type of magic versus that type of magic. There's the point where you'll get the trade-off where one thing powers, time magic will get an increase, but all of your elemental magics will get nerfed at the same time. So, but that happens way, way later. The items, I wish I agree with you. I wish there had been more parity for the other classes. That's kind of my point. Like, I know the monk isn't supposed to have anything, but even like some sort of robes or something that increases resistances here and there because the monk is basically...
Or is it any armor or something like that?
No, like if you put any armor on the monk, he gets immediately worse.
Yes, right.
Immediately.
Which is, yeah, and so that's what's kind of frustrating is like, okay, in a vacuum, that's a really cool gimmick, but you're saddled with this guy for the whole game, right? And so it's like, that's it. You never put anything on him. That's kind of a bummer, right? You wish that there was a way to interact with him and configure him the way that you do the others, even if it wasn't through equipment or something like that.
Right? Yeah, the only thing I think you could put on the monk was the accessory that didn't have a negative impact.
Exactly. Yeah, I had an accessory on for him.
But you have what? And then it's kind of funny that the mages had a shield slot, but didn't get anything that could actually fit in that until you got the cape at the very, very freaking end.
Yes.
I was like, okay, could you, even if it was crappy, even if it was just cosmetic for that matter, just giving me something to put in that slot, whether it actually does anything or not, is immaterial. It's just the fact that I'm like, oh, I got something new to put in here. Yeah. Sweet. As opposed to sitting there looking at it for an entire game.
Right? Yeah. It's like, well, this slot is here. They clearly put it there and intended it to be used, I guess, in the last 3 hours or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess our last 3 hours was, well, for me, it was like the last 3 hours was like the last 30 minutes. But yeah.
It was mostly chaos for me, actually. But
even that, it's still nice that it was there for folks who are like beating their head against that final boss. And and that boss rush too. Like, fuck, I need something that it is nice to get a bit of a boost at the end there, even if, some of us didn't feel like we needed it.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised that there wasn't a spot in there that allows you to use a tent or something to kind of heal up in between that boss rush. Because if I had not been massively over leveled, and if Tom hadn't used the ability to ignore all the freaking fights.
That would have been super, super, super hard.
Right? Yeah. That would have been... The only reason why it was no issue for me is because I was so freaking over leveled that wasn't even funny. But I'm just trying to think back in the day before you had all this stuff. My God, how frustrating would that have been?
Yeah, I think that would have been a really hard... We haven't talked too much about this, but like... and again, the reason I turned off the encounters is because you had a ton of ground to cover on those levels. Even if there were no encounters and you were sprinting like me from just to find the next staircase, that still took a decent amount of time. It's multiplied tenfold if you're having encounters and stuff like that, much less encounters that you're not over leveled for and are constantly challenging you and sort of taxing your resources and stuff like that. That was crazy. I had a question. Because I sort of thought the same thing. That's like, wow, this is massive and really, really difficult to do in, a single swing. Did you guys keep finding these rooms with this little, like, altar-y looking thing in it that looked like it should do something?
Yes.
What was that?
Huh?
In Temple of Chaos?
Yes. Every floor of that had something in the middle of it that was like... I don't know how to describe it, but it looked like there was it was some kind of decoration, but it was very centered and it looked like it should have done something.
Well, are you talking about Chaos or the Flying Fortress? Because I know in the Flying Fortress, I think it was a Flying Fortress, you get to a certain point in there where in the middle of the map you could look down on the world below.
No, I saw that thing, and there was a really cool cutscene where a bunch of stuff lights up, and it makes an X, and it points to things. Here,
yeah, because the Flying Fortress had rooms with chests, but then there was a room with like a weird altar thing. That was it gray, like a bunch of gray rocks.
No, it was like silver, kind of, or not silver. It was sort of gold. It like looked like a harp or something like that. You can see it in the maps that we have. Let me. I'll look up a screen cap of the maps really quick.
Yeah, because I don't remember that.
They're everywhere, too. Like, there was one on most floors. Temple of Chaos. What? Pixel.
Are you talking about the one that's like in the Temple of the Water Fiend or Fiends of Water Floor?
There probably was one there. Let me see. Not you. Let's see. Maybe you. All right, hang on. I'm gonna send you guys a link.
Okay.
Sorry for the listeners. This is really thrilling content.
Yeah. You can see this link too if you somehow miraculously figure it out.
RetroWalkthroughs.com/final-fantasy-1/maps/chaos/-shrine-b1.
You're talking about the green section there in the middle?
Left and right hand chambers. There's a thing at the back.
Oh, yeah, totally.
What is
that? Yes.
It's just decoration, I guess?
Yeah.
I was fucking playing with it for like 3 or 4 minutes. Like, this has got to do something.
It doesn't do shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything.
Then there was part of me that was like, oh, maybe it's for... Remember, if you flip back a couple of episodes of that, I didn't know what the church was for. I thought maybe it was like and this is what clicked this in my head, is you're like, oh, it would be nice if you could use some of your tents or cottages or whatever. I thought maybe it was something like that because they were sparse enough that it would have been about like what you would have needed, right, to do an occasional heal in this like gauntlet of a dungeon. But no, it's just
I wonder if there's some condition where. By the way, this website, is it only Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy 2? Are the guides on this website? Wow, interesting. It's like a retro walkthroughs. This copyright 2007 to 2024, and I went to the front page to see what there was, and it's just Final Fantasy 1 and 2.
And 2 is in a beta format.
Oh, this says Retro Walkthroughs is a website dedicated to producing high quality walkthroughs for classic video games. So far, I'm averaging one guide every 7 years. Wow. Okay, that's correct.
Hey, we're here though. That's good.
We are. Wow. Okay, this is interesting. And I forgot what I was going to ask now because I'm so interested in what the fuck's happening here.
The only thing as far as like giving you like a little bit of a break that I read about is that I think the fiends, it's either individually or when you kill all 4 of them, they then do not respawn. So if you decided to hoof it out, you could go heal up and then speed run through down to chaos.
Interesting. Okay.
Without having to do those guys again.
I thought the fun part about the way that they set them up is like you find the stairs to go down to the next level, right? And like they're on the stairs. Like you can't go through unless you hit them and beat them. Yeah. That was kind of an interesting idea.
I also like that their sprites are like orbs, which before I didn't really, I don't know. It was kind of funny, but whatever. In the temples, they're in their individual ones. But then when they show up again, it's like, oh, you're still this like colored sphere. That's cool, man. Good for you. All right, so maybe we can come back if there's more like map or mechanical stuff. But I think we have to talk about the temporarily challenged elephant in the room here.
Are we talking about Travis's clock reading skills again? No,
so
I guess not.
We're sent back into the past for this.
Yeah, we're 2,000 years, maybe.
But it's Garland. So do you have a handle on like the story of this? Because I was confused reading it exactly one time.
I thought Garland like went back in the past. So you like went backwards to find him and stop him.
So you killed him in the nominal present of the vast majority of this game at the beginning of it, right? That was
we're in the present at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. So you go to the Chaos Shrine, and then you. This is like the first place you go to outside of Corellia or whatever.
Right.
Is it Corellia? Like in Star Wars? Did I miss that?
That's Cornelia.
Cornelia, thank you. So anyways, you go there and you get rid of Garland. I can't remember that part of the game. Does he die or does he like run away and say something menacing or?
Yeah, let me go back and look. I don't remember. Do you remember, Travis? Did we kill him?
You fight him, he runs away.
He does run away. Okay.
Ran away 2,000 years in the past.
But then he said he makes some comment about how he used like the power of the elements like sent him back into the past. Right? Like how did he get back there? There's some dialogue here where he's like, well, the elements sent me back, but then I used them to make the fiends.
Right.
The things that make the world like crappy right now. But I was anyway, and then he starts talking about I think it's right before you fight him. He goes on this little monologue about how you're stuck in this loop.
Yeah. So essentially Garland is the archdemon from 2,000 years ago. He creates the 4 fiends or the 4 elements.
Okay.
And then Garland to where if something happens to him, they can turn around and send him back to his old version of himself so that he can never technically die. So when we kill him, and I'm air quoting the crap out of this, in the present time, those 4 fiends awaken and send him back in time so that he doesn't die, and then he can just come back and
But he's already back. That's what I mean. This is
Right.
like classic time travel paradox.
Yeah, it is the paradox of time travel. But then that's why the way to stop it, because he's like, you can't kill me because I always get sent back here. But then by the fact that the Warriors go back and kill him back there, you prevent him from. And we killed the 4 fiends back in that time period. You prevent him from them existing in the future, therefore they can't send him back.
Oh, okay. All right.
And this is me talking out of my ass hardcore. This is just this is my assumption based upon what we saw / read.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. I think if I were to summarize it, I'd probably land somewhere similar, where the Warriors of Light learn that the 4 fiends were created when Garland's hatred merged with the 4 elements of nature. I'm reading this from fandom. I'm just kidding.
Oh, there it is. Okay. I was
this is not from my head.
He's getting really, the pros took a step up there.
No, what you were just saying, Travis, is pretty close to what's being read here or noted here. So I think
I'm not on fandom, so
no, I know you're not, because I'm reading it. But you're exactly right. So
all right.
That still doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, what the fuck? It's a time loop. He can live forever.
Yeah, I mean that's the time travel paradox, though, right? If you that's the whole thing. If you go to the past, you change the future, so the future that was there can't be the same. But if you get sent back to the past, you exist at both times simultaneously. Yeah. So that's the whole thing. It's like you can't be in one and not in the other. And if you're removed from one, that means you're removed from both.
I think this is referred to as the bootstrap paradox, because you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but you can't.
But you can't. Yeah.
You can't. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. Anyways, I thought that if I had notes, this was sort of tacked on, right? There was no indication that there was any sort of. I guess there was some, right? That all the flavor text throughout the different towns were talking about, 200 years ago or 400 years ago, the fiends started causing trouble, sort of thing.
Yeah. I wonder if some of that's lost in translation, literally.
Could be. But it does feel like Garland is this, loudmouthy guy who you dispatch at the beginning of the game. And then, I don't know, I got a little bit of narrative whiplash being like, oh, actually, he's the big bad all along. I maybe wish that they'd done more, that Garland in the present, where you spend the vast majority of the game, I wish that he loomed a little larger. Because he's listed here as the primary antagonist of the game, in the guides and the wikis and stuff. And you don't know that until the last half hour.
Yeah, I always feel like that feeds into D&D too, where you're running into different monsters along the way and you're getting little narrative snippets, but then you start piecing it together there's a bigger baddie behind these baddies. Oh, that one we killed at the beginning? Actually, they're pulling the strings the whole time.
Yeah.
Kind of like a simple, tropey kind of story.
I think actually, the bones of this I do like. I would have wanted to see it executed maybe a little more, I don't know, more.
I mean, for me, the fact that I play D&D and I've witnessed something very similar to this happening on my table multiple times, I'm kind of like, okay, I accept it. I'm happy with it. Let's go.
Yeah.
But that's my personal experience. And I don't know. Again, I also am not expecting too much narratively, given the limitations of the systems and everything and how old this is.
Yeah.
But if this was something that was made
even
10 years ago, I'd be like, I 100% be like, dude, this is a phoned in freaking story, USOBs. You basically did this and like, oh shit, we need a baddie. Oh, well, let's just pull back the dude that we had in the future and make some time paradox bullshit. No one can fight us on that.
I think in real time, I'm going to take back my criticism for 1986, 7, something like that.
Wasn't this 87? Yeah.
This is pretty good.
Yeah. That's my only defense of this. And as I said, probably because I have experienced something very similar at the table. Where someone was like, "Oh, this is your friend," and it's like, and literally they quote unquote died accidentally at the very beginning, and then 7 months later, freaking 100 hours plus of tabletop nerding later, hey, that dude that you thought died, nah, he was actually the big badass the whole time that's been driving you to do this, and this. So yeah.
That was, and maybe now I'll amend and say that I think that this is actually a really cool idea, and that's why I would like to see it executed more cleanly. Is that there's the core nugget of this is actually something that's pretty cool. So
everything about this game, I think that really defines the game for me. Is like every piece of the game, there's like a nugget there that's really cool that we've seen explored later, and it's just like it's so. I'm not sure exactly what the right word is, but like this is the I don't know, the flower bed, right, where all these seeds are planted, and then throughout the years we've seen them really grow into like beautiful plants, and it's so cool to go back. And this is why I was so excited to go back to this one after playing 12, playing 16, playing 7 remake, etc. Is to go back and see like where did this start, and did they get it from the beginning, like where this was going to go? And man, I feel like they really did. Set up a lot of, there's a lot of fertile ground here for what comes later.
I mean, the one thing I think of, and this is just my opinion, and I don't know if this is the truth, this whole series is kind of what started RPGs in the West at the very least. Like this is I mean, there were other RPGs, don't get me wrong, but this whole series is kind of the foundation that a lot of stuff ends up being built on later on. And the cool thing for me is playing Final Fantasy 1, to kind of do your point, Larry, is I can see the parts of these ideas, and then I can see where this game directly influenced games 10, 15, 20 years later.
Yep.
I can see the pieces of where like, oh, I remember seeing this as I was playing this game. I was like, oh, I've seen this in later games. And it's not like I've seen it in all RPGs or JRPGs as they're called nowadays. I've seen them in a few select ones here and there. So that's when I realized that this has massive influence far beyond just being a fun game to play.
Well, it's interesting about the influence too, because a blind spot that I have, and maybe you do or don't, is Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior. Because Dragon Quest came out in Japan like a full year, almost a year and a half before Final Fantasy, May 1986. So I wonder those two in tandem have that,
Dragon Quest is another one that's had major influence, but the thing, I don't know this for a fact, but I don't believe Dragon Quest has seen as much success outside of Japan as Final Fantasy has. I could be totally off base there, but I can remember friends that worked at GameStop back when GameStop was actually worth something, that they would sit there and go, there would be lines of people waiting for the release of Final Fantasy games. They would not have that same turnout for Dragon Quest games. So I know that Dragon Quest was really successful in Japan, but I don't know if it had that same level of success that Final Fantasy did outside of Japan. Yeah.
I feel like, there are several 3DS releases that are critically acclaimed. I know that Dragons or number 11, something of an elusive age. I can't remember the name. Dragons of Elusive Age, something like that. Hit really well, but that's much later than Final Fantasy was hitting hard,
Yeah. I mean, 7, a lot of people in the West, you'll be like, what's your first JRPG? It's like Final Fantasy 7.
Oh yeah, fucking absolutely.
Or the other one is Final Fantasy 4, which was actually not Final Fantasy 4, but we called it Final Fantasy 4.
It was 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see that. I mean, you will find those that will say a Dragon Quest here and there, but it's going to be much fewer and farther between.
What did you, not to segue here, but did you guys have any opinions about the little epilogue at the end?
Other than I couldn't speed up the damn text.
Oh my God, it was so fucking slow.
So long.
God.
It was so long too. So long, so slow that I was just like, okay, this is cool. Okay, this is way too slow. No.
I can't remember anything else about it other than the fact that it took forever and a day, went so slow. I'm sitting there going, I read the sentence and sit there and go, okay, I literally turned my head away for like 30 seconds, turned back. It's like, oh, that part that I read 30 seconds ago is just now starting to fade off the screen.
There's some good stuff in here, though, particularly in the context of like the story now. It was a mere trick of fate that had given rise to the chain of Garland's wrath. It's this like freak thing that he went back and is messing with time and all that stuff. But all that is now past. The four forces flowing as they were meant, the warriors prepared to cross time and return to the world they knew, a world where Princess Sarah, Queen Jane, and even Garland himself await, which I thought was kind of a weird thing to say. When was this fateful day that sent time spiraling into a loop? None can say. So that's weird. And then you flick through some more of this stuff, and they say that they're basically going to break none will ever recall the struggle the four endured, for the breaking of the chains means that it never existed. But within the tales of fantasy that people tell, the memory of their deeds live on, blah, blah, blah. And now their return is upon us. With the memory of their struggle buried deep in their hearts, they will quietly watch over the world. Then this turns into sort of like a moral tale here. Blah, blah, blah. The power of light must never be used for dark, and the true crystals reside in your heart. What does that mean? But it switches now. It's like talking directly to the player. The true crystals reside in your heart, for you are the warrior who crossed time. You are the bringer of light.
Yeah, that piece, I mean, the crystals in your heart is like, yeah, directly to you as a player. Like, yeah, this was a game you played with the crystals were the central piece, but really the energy and whatever else that represents is within you the whole time.
That's kind of an interesting sort of, like I said, they make it kind of meta, but even within the narrative, the idea that, you're going to get zipped forward back now 2,000 years back into the present, where Garland is, and I guess essentially to the beginning of the game before any of this stuff has gone wrong, which is kind of interesting. And then they're like sort of these silent protectors. This is what this actually reminded me of was the end of Ocarina of Time, right? Where Link gets sent back as Kid Link,
right?
And nobody knows any of all of the stuff that happened in that whole game is in his head, and no one else knows about it in that timeline. And that's basically what's happened to these guys too, that they undergo this ordeal, and they're the only ones who knew it happened.
Right, exactly. No one else knows.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how many other ways can you end a time loop thing, right? Where you fix the time loop thing, and you're like, well, that was it. Only you know that it happened.
And then the credits were insanely long.
I skipped them.
I was going to, but it was like, well, the song's kind of pleasant. Let me see. And every once in a while, they tag something on the end. And I think now they wouldn't have the skip anything interesting that they would put on the end. But I was like, better safe than sorry. And so I didn't. And it's like another 20 minutes of credits. It's insane how little. It's like anyone who ever looked at this game, they're in the credits.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I think I set it down, walked away and got some food and came back and I was like, oh, okay, still going.
And you can save at the end. I thought that was interesting. You get the little star on your save file.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I don't know what that...
I didn't try loading it back up after that. I'm wondering, maybe I should do that. I'm curious what happens now.
All random encounters are chaos.
Oh my god.
Hey, it means I can't auto freaking battle my way through it.
True. Like, this is adding the difficulty for you. I mean, I sincerely doubt you'd be playing this game again.
I'm actually considering going back through with like either all monks or trying a different party mix in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I enjoy it, and with the quality of life stuff, I would probably, honestly, if I did it this time around, I'd probably turn the boost on just to make it go a little faster.
Mm-hmm. This was fun. This was a good one. We learned a ton, and it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to diving into 2. So just a heads up for the audience, we are wrapping up Final Fantasy 1 here, and we're, digging into the next one, Final Fantasy 2, in January. We don't have a time locked in yet, but I've heard or read at least that Final Fantasy 2 is like quite a bit different. Goes into swerves a bit, which is kind of cool. Almost like Legend of Zelda or Link 2 after Legend of Zelda.
Link's Adventure of Link.
Thank you. That's it. I was like, it has a fucking title that I cannot remember.
The game that is universally despised, but actually is not as bad as everyone remembers it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I hear.
Like I said, I went back to The Adventures of Link in my late 20s, early 30s, and I thoroughly enjoyed the game. I hated that game when I was a kid. I thought it sucked.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I went back at an older age with with better perspective or a little more open mind, probably, because I think we'll see. I'm curious to see how Final Fantasy 2 differs from Final Fantasy 1, because I'm wondering if it's going to be the same issue that Adventures of Link had from The Legend of Zelda, where everyone saw the logo, the Zelda, and assumed it was going to be the same style. And when it was a side scroller, everyone's like, what the actual F, and hated it because of that.
Right. Yep.
They went in with certain expectations, and since it did a complete 180 and just didn't touch those expectations in any way, shape, size, or form, I think that's why I got a lot of flack. And I'm curious to see if 2 does something similar.
Yep.
I think that's a contemporary phenomenon, though. My recollection is that at the time, like, Zelda 2 did very well. Like, it sold a bunch of copies and was well received and did just fine. It's only your modern Zelda sensibilities informing that one is so very different. At the time, there was just the 2 of them, and who knew, right?
I don't know. I mean, I know people that bought.
Well, I'm sure it was somebody, but I'm saying on the whole, it wasn't like it was like.
I don't know. Like those people,
it wasn't.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I remember back then people hating it after. Like, I had friends that had got it, played it, and then for like an hour, then never touched it again because they hated it.
I could certainly relate,
and so that's why I say I don't know if it was well received back in the day. I've never looked it up, and you, Tom, maybe you did, and you're like, no, it was. I'm just saying, from the people that I knew that owned the game, it was pretty much universally despised by everyone that I knew that owned the game.
I think it's telling that they went back to the other thing for
right
in the past. So,
I mean, yeah. Link to the Past is my favorite Legend of Zelda game, period. But yeah.
I just think it's interesting how such a swerve for these, second game, right? Mario 2, at least the US version. Castlevania, we got Simon's Quest, which was very different than the first one. There's just a history of that in the NES era, at least, and it's very interesting.
Mario 2 originally supposed to be something else, and they slapped Mario on it.
It was Doki Doki Panic, and they put the Mario sprites because the Lost Levels, which was supposed to be Mario 2, was just they thought it was too hard for an American audience.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, but I think that this all speaks to, like, there was no such thing as a video game franchise.
Yes, that's right.
Right? It didn't exist yet, so.
Yep.
They were still trying to figure out what the hell that meant.
Mm-hmm.
Although, wait, didn't King's Quest... Wasn't that already a series?
There might be series, but like a franchise as we understand it now was sort of very much, I think, in its infancy at the time. So
yeah, King's Quest. Oh yeah, we already had King's Quest 1, 2, and 3 by 87.
Wow, interesting.
Technically, you had 4 of them because they're saying Wizard and the Princess was the very first King's Quest entry, and that was in 80. 1, 2, and 3, 84, 85, 86. 88 was number 4, 90 was number 5. Damn, they were doing it every 2 years. Holy crap.
Damn. On to something.
So maybe that could have been a franchise. I don't know. I don't know what it takes to be considered a franchise, but I mean, yeah. Granted, there hasn't been a King's Quest since 98, so that kind of tells you a little something there.
That's point and click. That's cool. I never heard of King's Quest before. That's neat.
Well, maybe King's Quest will be a game we explore here on the RPG Backlog. Who knows? But next is Final Fantasy II. Thank you, everyone, for being along for this ride. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Travis. I enjoyed this conversation immensely, and the game as well. It was a nice, tidy 4 episodes. That felt like really good, in my view. Anything else from either of you before we end the podcast?
Excited to be back in a couple of weeks.
I'm looking forward to going down some more Final Fantasy and watching this series evolve into what I know it is today.
Yeah, that's right. That's going to be the cool thing to see. All right, folks. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you there for Final Fantasy II in January of 2025. Until then, thanks so much for listening. Tell your friends, rate it on your podcast service of choice, and we will be back in the future.